Thank you, everybody, especially our friends from HFC, to have us here to present this very novel solution to the market. Before I begin, we understand that what we're doing is quite different. It's quite revolutionary because it entails maybe thinking a little bit different on how to approach, traditional video workflows. So if at any point you guys have any objections or have any questions, please let me know. I'd like to have this in a bit of a more dynamic discussion with everybody. So what I will be presenting today, it's a solution from Netint. We do specifically applied transcoding in many parts across, the glass-to-glass supply chain. The biggest challenge is to find new ways to monetize video, to cut costs, without compromising all the different facets of what your end customers need, etc., which makes for a very complex task that we don't think it can be solved by a single vendor, but rather a collaboration between a lot of stakeholders, hence the reason why we work with HFC developing these solutions. We have been doing transcoding using FPGAs, these traditional boxes that were used in broadcasting to do this massive compression of video signals that gets applied in contribution segments, distribution segments. And over time, as technology develops, but also as the demand of customers changes, these models unfortunately become a little bit obsolete. What we are proposing is this little card that can do what a server filled with CPU power or GPU power to process more video with the lowest latency possible without compromising its quality. And by, of course, when you make these big promises, obviously the trade-off is going to consume a lot of power. And we are ticking all the boxes to solve this solution. Well, a lot of our customers think, how is this possible? I cannot get into that because it's very advanced technology. What we respond to our customers or those interested in our technology is to let us test it and to understand your use cases. Use cases that are quite ample. The video transcoding, how we do it, can be used in live streaming broadcasting, can be used in car gaming, applications of augmented reality or virtual reality, video surveillance, high-density decoding, AI acceleration, edge computing, video conferencing. So we're not looking at video analysis or video compression as a sort of commoditized task, but rather as an exercise that has to be worked on with different partners in order to arrive to a proper shortcut, because that is the only way how we can arrive to more density with good quality. And of course, arriving to monetize video without costing an arm and a leg. Enough a little bit of what we do. We're here more to kind of answer the questions of any vendor that might be interested in what we're doing and why we're doing it. Obviously, we're doing this because we see that there's a market growth driven by increasing video consumption. There's more people using more devices. There's a cultural change that traditional methods are not able to harness. But one thing that is constant is that there is more video being demanded. Along that sphere, there's more video services. There's a proliferation of platforms on streaming that are providing more flexible content to people. But most importantly, people are able to interact and be able to make more on-demand choices, which sort of fragments the different audiences that people are able to address and increasingly makes it difficult for them to be faithful to a single vendor. There's also advancements in cloud computing, which increase incredibly the scalability and efficiency of normal headends or normal labs because they provide more a sort of infrastructure service that can cut costs and leverage existing investments on these very large and complex infrastructures. Without forgetting that even if we're looking at a small screen or if we're looking at a traditional television, customers are still demanding for higher quality in terms of subjective quality, but also latency. So it's not something that we can necessarily trade off when we're trying to look after new customers and attempting to solve these solutions based on what the market is demanding. Obviously, there's market challenges. We are a global company, so we see very different challenges in Canada and in the United States, versus what we see in Europe in terms of what regulations, etc., and certainly difference in price point accessibility in other places like Asia. Hence why we work with different partners and different technology vendors to decipher, would be the correct word, the correct answer in how to move forward these businesses. My focus is in Europe, so obviously we understand that we're a little bit on a second gear compared to what's happening right now in the United States, but it doesn't preclude us from providing solutions that are relevant to what happens in this market. Besides this, there's more emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, which our cards support for different application analysis, but most importantly, to maintain relevancy in future codecs and remain future-proof for the customers that use our solutions. The point of our meeting today is because people here are, of course, working in the streaming segment, on the cable segment. There's OTT platform dominance. The use cases are not what they used to be, that were quite linear, and they were quite easy to understand or approach. But the one thing is certain is that OTT platforms, or let's say streaming field, as it is understood, is what the market keeps on demanding, and then it is our challenge as technology vendors to try to fit in without losing money and make these things happen. The best way to explain this, given the complexity of our technology, is just to present to you a few advanced cases from our technology. These cases we have achieved in the past 2 years, and of course it represents a panoply of where transcoding can be applied. I start with this case, illustrates the power our cards can do for cloud phones and video applications using a small amount of these cards. This is what got us our start into this business, where, in the end, people didn't think that it was possible to, let's say, mimic the capabilities of what a telephone could do video-wise without resorting to traditional boxes in headends, etc. We were able to provide a solution in which, by using only our cards and servers, you could have video decoder, encodec, acceleration, and a bunch of different applications on your telephone by cutting an entire process within traditional antennas and broadcast labs for people to be able to use their telephones and leverage video just going into the cloud directly. This case started off in China, where we were able to create a capped CRF bitrate for all live streaming sports and content without requiring to buy more servers or more chassis in a single set, and enabling the users like yourselves to use bare metal that is still available within your capital expenses. For example, in a single distribution system, there was a lot of more steps to arrive from the creation or the source of content directly to the end systems that people are using in their telephones, etc. But by leveraging, CDN live transcoding solutions along with players like Akamai, CDN77, and other players as such, we are able to send whatever it's being streamed into an edge node where you can use our density solution to achieve economies of scale of large video, low latency, and high quality for live events using these cards available within commercially off-the-shelf servers. Another case that we are able to solve that exists and is very prevalent in broadcasting is multi-viewing encoding. The reason I put some stars here is because, fortunately, we are under NDA. I can tell you that it's a very, very large content rights owner in the United States that it's applying this technology to use multi-view on live sports, where we can do stitching and we can do independent bit streams on a single screen without compromising the time that it takes to get to the consumer, and enabling companies like Present here to be able to scale and be able to sell more sports content without incurring more cost when scaling. Traditionally, that was a problem because everybody, including ourselves, we have known we can do transcoding, and it would be a perfect world where we can grab any content that was, for example, uncompressed, and then just the magic solution would be simply to just grab it, compress it, and then send it out, and then save as much time as possible. Technologically wise, that was not possible because of the physical limitations that it takes to make an FPGA to do this, but also because of the research and development costs that incur companies to be able to provide these solutions. As we are able to do this in a very different way where we can leverage existing hardware and enable us to continue, for example, get all the video feeds from source 1, source 2, source 50, for example, do the encoding whilst understanding the end profiles required, and then using our own proprietary software to understand how to redistribute these feeds, and of course reach to more customers without thinking, oh, perhaps if I do it, it's just going to cost me more per batch of increment, rather than actually achieving economies of scale with the added benefit of not compromising quality, etc. We also have done another capability of our cards. It's artificial intelligence acceleration. Same thing is for the same customer that I have mentioned in case number 4, where besides the transcoding application that is able to achieve, we are able to aid into small sort of tasks on lip sync or certain motions or certain ad insertion parameters within the frame. That also opens certain opportunities, not just with what the frame does to transport certain video content, but also how to embed perhaps other monetizing opportunities, such as ad insertion or other features that may be sellable to your end customers. Which brings us to a very cool point. This is another very, very large broadcaster where we are achieving multi-layer AV1 live contribution encoding. And I think this is really the case where the capabilities of our cards are not just based on the density that it can achieve or the minimum quality that is required by viewers, but the amount of layers that, for example, we can insert in a certain frame for management of these large corporations to see, okay, how can we probably sell this space and actually monetize video without thinking how much extra is going to cost on more technology purchase down the line. In this case particularly, the alternative was to look at incumbent vendors to do the very same thing where the cost would have been about 4 times higher than we can propose, whilst leveraging existing bare metal within their premises. Same customer, when we apply our same boards, we can do encoding at edge, where in order to save on latency, in order to save on more interactive content, and to make the ad insertion customized for localized communities, is also something where we see a big potential for monetization. Where the example previously, when we talk about, let's say, live contribution encoding on this methodology, it sort of speaks from the center to a very large audience. So then how can we monetize this if we're sending an ad that is not relevant to a very, very large audience? With our card, if we try to think a little bit differently or where to put the transcoding and how to work it, we can achieve a scenario where if our customers know what's important depending on different geographical zones, then the monetization or ad insertion will be localized. And in that respect, it does add value to those who are watching it, as well to those who are buying it, and certainly more to those who are selling it. The process of achieving this is you get the live source, you get a CDN distribution where you maintain this at different spots within at the edge of whichever community you are selling to. And then you can do on the fly transcoding and ladder generation, where we were able to understand, there's a big line here where customers need to know who makes the decision to send it through. But with this schematic and the application of these cards, you can do something that is actually not being done except in some cases in the United States. But we see that it's possible more so in Europe to monetize the content and to leverage advertising opportunities. And the last case, that video surveillance at large scale, face recognition and other features required by this industry. So in a way, it's live video. Difference is that for security, people are not going to buy very high-end cameras necessarily. It's the same exercise where people want to leverage the amount of capital expenses they have incurred. And with our cards, it's not just, let's say, the density that can be achieved, but also enhancing the quality of the video on the fly. For example, face recognition, timestamps, object detection, classification, live streaming for first responders, all these features that are the reason why people would need these video surveillance solutions. We are able to address this market in this respect. This is very different from, I know, cable, streaming, live sports, but it's something that we do serve a lot in Asian countries and in some parts in the United States. And I think this is very important. Right now, as everybody knows, we have a very, very strong partnership with Akamai, where we are doing a lot of infrastructure as a service, meaning that they themselves are helping other customers do on-the-fly encoding, transcoding, live streaming, using their servers and their distributing content delivery network, where it's not just sending information through, but making sure that the cost of bare metal, latency, and quality is not compromised as traditional, let's say, broadcasters are trying to approach it. This, in the end, enables high-density encoding for cloud general customers. This is mentioned, is not necessarily to propose it as a threat or anything, but rather as an illustration that modern communications are changing quite quickly. And the market itself is offering very, very different approaches to what customers are looking for. And I think it's important to mention the way how Akamai is achieving this, because more so than people pulling the plug, and as mentioned initially on the first part of this panel, is that IP is grabbing this by force, but also customers are deciding more how to interact with these things, and the big question is how to monetize it. I can share some commercial results, so it doesn't look like I'm just selling you guys some boards, etc. This is public knowledge. I think API video, the live streaming and video on demand provider, with our cards, we have been able to drop the cost of transcoding to virtually zero, which in certain cases allows for the transport of live content and then opens the possibility for people to run it selling ads or selling subscriptions. But most importantly, it enables them to add more users without fearing the increasing cost of adding subscriptions or compromising quality at the end of the line when the customer might feel the product may be compromised. Mayflower operates in content that is not traditionally broadcast, but numbers speak for themselves. By employing our cards, the original cost of running their operations using a CPU was about $10 million US dollars when they adopted the same bare metal that they had and then just filled it up with 10 cards each of these. You can see costs dropping by more than 70%. It's important to note that these economies are not achieved by compromising quality or latency. And that's why we invite everybody here to give us a business case so we can prove that what we're saying is actually working. And zapping is sort of the Netflix of Latin America. Same thing. We were able to cut their hardware footprint by half, again, for live sports without compromising quality. It presents a real opportunity for the ever-increasing demand of live sports, ad insertion, etc., where the only, compromise to do is to ask oneself, how can we work differently? And I think for the people present here, the way to achieve that is not by just looking at us as a technology vendor, but also to talk to HFC, because they are also understanding a lot of your challenges. And we will step in to work with them to address very different use cases and enabling not just cost savings opportunities, but also growth, in other markets that you may be facing. So I like to keep these slides for the end so we don't talk too much about, who we are, etc. We're here more to kind of solve your problems. But the VPU is not really something new. We did come about it around 2016, but the other people that are making these, but they're not selling them, are, big elephants in the room, right? Google and Meta. You can see how they have shaped, the landscape in every country of modern communication. And I think we are able to make this available for the market at a much more competitive price point, and most importantly, a much more competitive performance destined to work within the video segment. We released our first VPU in 2018. Our last ASIC, the one that we have right now that we're working with HFC, has been released in 2021. And we will release our next product that you should cover everything needed from the contribution side all the way to the distribution coming next year. And just an idea, I like to leave this at last. It's like, oh yes, you talk about density, how much we left everybody just an idea of what it means to have one of these cards. And I think the most important piece of data is, look, you can do 32 full HD channels with one of these with a very minimal latency, with a very, very low power consumption, and with a very low price point. So maybe just to bring back, why are we doing all this? We see that there's a growth of OTT platforms, or at least an OTT feel, from traditional broadcasters that has to be mimicked somehow in order to have some market fit. There's more connected devices. People, even myself, I'm using different screens, at once. People are interacting with more content more rapidly. I think for the operators, people are using more machine learning and artificial intelligence to understand certain workflows to aid them into achieving more complex offerings to different people, not just sort of a panoptical way of looking at things, but rather a more matrix way of achieving different audiences. There's a demand for 4K and 8K content. It's not much, but the demand is there. At least it provides some sort of future-proof capabilities. And lastly, it doesn't get said enough. There's more interactive ways of approaching content, be that Twitch, OnlyFans, Zoom, Snapchat, etc., where the video demand is just increasing more and more. The last thing, there's some challenges for all this, is of course content saturation. As much as people thought at some point that having the right content was going to guarantee people remaining with a certain vendor or subscription, it's not the case anymore. There's also challenges of cost sensitivity. There's too many players in the market. Bundling is required. There's higher infrastructure costs. Maybe tariffs have something to do with this. We don't know. And there's regulatory constraints. I think that's more for Europe in terms of the EU data privacy concern, where all these things add more pressure to the solutions that have to be solved or invented to enter the market for people. The future outlook, how we see it, is that certainly the complexity of achieving transcoding solutions in a way that can address different people and reduce costs will necessitate, AI power or, machine learning approaches, not just, I guess, traditional PID remapping, whatever, but we were able to do this already. Cloud-based transcoding continues to expand. We have this slide since last year, and this could not be more true, because more and more we're just getting more requests from people finding that it's really an opportunity to use cloud to do what we once thought that broadcasters were only able to achieve. We mentioned 5G and edge computing. This is just also a very, very real development where we are able to get closer to certain audiences, segment them, and address them in almost, I don't want to say the word individually, but I guess by relevant pockets, where this was a very big trade-off in terms of latency, but we are able to do this today at scale. Lastly, we see that there's always a demand for higher quality, where people are looking for faster, more interactive content, and most importantly, for it to be in sync with other subscriptions happening within their lives. And I think that's where our cards are able to solve all these problems all together. If you guys want to hear more about what we're building, or if you would like us to share more industry insights or more technical knowledge, please feel free to contact me or our friends at HFC. I know that what we're trying to achieve is quite novel, it's quite new. I think we're really a tool that can make your companies grow. We will be very happy to conduct this test together. Thank you.
Thank you.